There are coaster manufacturers that get all the attention. Vekoma with their buttery smooth rides, Intamin with their record-breaking insanity, and RMC with their out-of-control and legendary wooden coaster transformations. But there's one company that's been quietly innovating, experimenting, and building some of the most unique coasters in the world, yet never quite gets the same love. Premier Rides isn't just some side note in coaster history. They're the underdog with a legacy of risks, reinvention, and real innovation. From launch coasters before it was the industry standard, to creating intense, story-driven rides for Paramount Parks and even Universal, Premier Rides might just be the most underrated name in the game. This is the story of Premier Rides and why they deserve more hype. Premier was founded in 1995, and unlike some companies that start with flat rides or woodies, Premier jumps straight into high-tech steel coasters. Their early strategy? Target the biggest names in the game, namely Six Flags, with cutting-edge launch coasters. Their big break came in 1996 with Batman and Robin the Chiller at Six Flags Great Adventure, two dueling limb launch coasters in the same station, themed to the heroes of Gotham. Sounds amazing, right? It was, at least in theory. The ride had constant maintenance issues, uncomfortable over-the-shoulder restraints, and high downtime. But underneath the flaws was a bold experimental ride system that paved the way for the next generation of launch coasters. Next came Mr. Freeze at Six Flags Over Texas and St. Louis, a launch shuttle coaster that felt like something out of a sci-fi movie, launching riders out of the station into a vertical spike before falling back in reverse. Premier was pushing boundaries before it was cool, and breaking the ice for what the launch coaster could be. I'll stop with the puns, I promise. But in all seriousness, these two coasters marked an insanely bold beginning for an unproven manufacturer. I feel like Intamin gets this credit typically, but you can't tell me that Premier wasn't pushing boundaries with their first two coasters. And quite honestly, that bold premiere of their company, that's the last pun, I promise, would actually lead to some even bigger partnerships, opening the door for some truly groundbreaking coasters.
Remember years ago when you were afraid, frightened, terrified of the dark? Welcome back. Prepare yourself for the Outer Limits Flight of Fear, the scariest, darkest, most twisted roller coaster ever. Face your fears, only at Paramount's Kings Island.
While Six Flags gave Premier its start, Paramount Parks and Universal helped shape their creative reputation. At Paramount's Kings Island, Premier built Flight of Fear, a limb launch coaster in total darkness with UFO theming and a very disorienting spaghetti bowl layout. It opened in 1996 and still packs a punch to this day. It's a classic. Think about that. Before Velocicoaster, before Maverick, Premier was already launching guests into intense G-forces and wild inversions. That same year, a nearly identical Flight of Fear opened at King's Dominion, giving Premier a foothold in two major regional parks. But their masterpiece was still to come. In 2004, Universal Orlando turned to Premier for something ambitious. A thrilling dark ride coaster hybrid with full-blown animatronics, pyrotechnics, and launches. The result? Revenge of the Mummy. I know I might show my Universal bias here, but this ride was and still is a masterpiece. Premier worked with Universal Creative to seemingly blend indoor coaster tech with dark ride storytelling. The result was a ride that capitalized both on the Flight of Fear concept, but also threw in some dark ride elements, and that masterful touch from Universal Creative. This made something special that still pulls people in to this day. Every time my friends and I are at Universal, we have to ride Mummy, it's a non-negotiable. Revenge of the Mummy showed that Premier was totally capable of creating thrilling blends of technology and coaster design into seamless experiences. Again, I feel like Intamin gets a lot of credit for this kind of stuff. You don't really hear about the Mummy and how it essentially laid the groundwork for future rides like Gringotts and Hagrid's. In 2005, Premier took another big swing, this time a coaster that blended Hollywood car stunts, storytelling, and thrill into one sleek package. The Italian job Stunt Track. This was installed at Kings Island, Canada's Wonderland, and King's Dominion. The ride put guests in the front seat of a Mini Cooper on the run from bad guys, blasting through parking garages, jumping over rooftops, and even launching out of a tunnel with simulated explosions. What made this ride so special was the level of practical theming and timed effects. There were helicopters, police cars, gunfire effects, fireballs. It was crazy. The layout wasn't massive, but Premiere made every foot count by weaving in story, pacing, and visual energy. The launch, the cutbacks, the near misses, all of it created a sense of kinetic mayhem that few family thrill rides ever match. The Italian Job rides were renamed after Cedar Fair took over, but the bones of those rides still remain beloved by fans, and they show Premiere's unique strength, blending practical effects and coaster thrills to tell compelling cinematic stories. After the early 2000s, Premiere didn't really dominate headlines the way other manufacturers did. B&M was making flawless hypercoasters. Intamin was breaking records, even GCI and Vekoma were stepping up. Premiere kept building, but on a smaller scale. Custom family rides, smaller launch layouts, and contract work. But that doesn't mean they were irrelevant. Quite the opposite. They were evolving. In the 2010s, Premiere started making a comeback, but it would also debut one of their more controversial models. In 2012, they built Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, an ultra-compact launch coaster with a non-inverting loop and a vertical twist and an extremely compact plot. We know these as the Skyrocket 2 models. Now, there's a whole video to be made on these, and I'll be the first to tell you I'm not a huge fan. Like, I have one at my home park BGT, and I haven't ridden it in years. I find them to be quite unbalanced experiences. Not to get too in the weeds, but compared to their previous work with Batman and Robin or Flight of Fear, the Skyrockets just don't do it for me. However, they have been purchased quite a bit, and the GP seems to like them, so who am I to say? But I'm actually bringing up the Skyrocket because I feel it has tended to define Premiere in many people's minds. It's the same issue you get with B&M, where people are like, oh, all they do is just clone the same layout over and over again. Like, yeah, they have some clones, but like every manufacturer has clones. But unlike B&M, where there's a huge library to defend that argument, unfortunately Premiere's most popular model is likely people's most notable interaction with them. It's similar to Vekoma, that had this same issue back in the day. They were doing great work with Disney, and yet they were known for their SLCs and boomerangs. I feel like this is at the root of why Premiere doesn't get the hype they deserve. Because, well, this model has been copied and pasted so much that it has overshadowed their previous work. However, it seems like things are changing, and perhaps Premiere is going back to their roots, and not only reheating their nachos, but maybe reheating some other manufacturers' nachos as well. Premiere really re-entered the spotlight with West Coast Racers at Six Flags Magic Mountain in 2019, a dual-track racing launch coaster. I feel like this coaster doesn't get too much praise, as it's at Magic Mountain, so everything else kind of soars above it. But like, I love West Coast Racers, and thought it was a nice callback to Batman and Robin, as well as the Italian Job. It was actually Premiere's first racing coaster since the ill-fated Batman and Robin, but this time they got it right. The layout, while not massive, delivered on smoothness, pacing, and some unexpected whip. It also proved Premiere could still compete in the top tier of modern thrill rides. But perhaps their clearest sign that Premiere was back in the game came in 2022 with the debut of the completely underrated, mind you, Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando. The compact launch coaster stood out immediately to me for its unexpected ejector. The unique swing launch paired with a snappy layout at a relatively conservative speed. Oh, and no inversions. To me, it was exactly what SeaWorld needed, and provides a unique family coaster that actually has some bite to it. Icebreaker is all about momentum, airtime, and compact intensity. The twisted layout features quick transitions, pops of airtime, and a layout that feels faster and longer than it is. And while its early days were marred by debate over its height requirement and restraint system, those were eventually resolved, making it far more accessible. More importantly, Icebreaker marked Premiere's return to working with major chains beyond Six Flags, in branching out from the Skyrocket clones. It showed that SeaWorld, a chain that had just worked with Intamin on Pantheon, still trusted Premiere to bring a unique ride experience to the table. It may not be the flashiest ride in Orlando, but Icebreaker is a perfect example of Premiere doing what they do best, offering something just a little bit different from everybody else. From West Coast Racers' dueling layouts to Icebreaker's swing launch, Premiere wasn't trying to outdo Intamin or B&M. They were carving out their own niche. Thrilling, creative, space-efficient rides that pack serious punch. And that brings us to their most recent, and arguably most refined project yet. At Canada's Wonderland, Premiere dropped one of their most complete and thrilling creations yet, Alpenfury, a multi-launch coaster packed with dynamic elements, thrilling airtime, and perhaps one of their best layouts ever. I brought up that Premiere reheated their nachos recently, but Alpenfury really feels that way, particularly capitalizing on all the things I like about them, but presented in a more refined manner. Yet you can't help but notice the DNA of their original creations woven into Alpenfury. With Alpenfury, Premiere has fully re-established themselves, and quite interestingly have snuck in under the radar. And while I have my thoughts on the over-reliance of ejector-heavy layouts that are around today, I can't help but notice that Premiere seems to be using those elements very tactfully, while capitalizing on inversions that they've always kind of done very well, and also introducing new ones. You see, Premiere Rides isn't the biggest manufacturer. They don't build the tallest or the fastest. They've consistently taken creative risks, introduced new technologies, and told actual stories with their rides. From limb launches in the 90s to immersive cinematic coasters to tight and thrilling modern layouts, Premiere Rides has always been about pushing the boundaries. They may not get the same fanfare as Intamin or B&M, but they've earned their place in coaster history, and they're still proving that they belong. What do you think of Premiere Rides? Let me know down below, and as always, remember rule number 5. Relax and enjoy the ride. Thanks for watching.